Hi everyone, welcome to my channel CryptoWare. I'm extremely sorry for not being, regular since a very long time. Actually, I had just switched my job and I've joined Quick Heal, which is an Indian-based antivirus company. So I've been pretty much stuck up with that. So from now on, I'll be quite regular with the videos and I'm going to start a new playlist. So in the previous playlist, we covered some of the basics of malware analysis, which was completely at the basics level, like how you can start with analyzing a malware. It was mostly PE based, which is portable executable. For people who are completely new, let's consider it as .exe files that I'm currently talking about. But PE does not only, consist of a .exe file or a Windows executable file. It may contain some other kinds of files as well. Now, in this playlist, we'll be starting with, in fact, actual analysis of some real malware samples. I won't be letting you know which kind of malware sample is it, but yes, I'll be analyzing them. And these malware samples will not necessarily be .exe kind of files. These files are mostly like any kind of file types that we'll be analyzing, and I'll be giving you details about different file types that we are covering and why are we covering them in that particular way. So the first thing that we did talk about was static and dynamic analysis. So statically analyzing a malware completely depends upon the file type. So if you want to analyze a Windows file, so the static analysis of that particular file would be different because your tools would be a bit different, as the headers are completely different. So as the term, as the definition, or maybe as the reason suggests, also we have to think about, like, dynamic analysis is one thing that we'll be covering at the end, because initially we'll be going through how to analyze statically, in fact, analyze a file and gain more and more information from that particular file without running it. And we'll be using Remnux Linux for the static analysis, and we'll be using various kinds of tools which are already provided over there. And we did learn about installing Remnux Linux and how to, explore the entire operating system in our previous videos. I will provide the link in the description below. So let's get started. So here I have my my malware sample. Let's see. So the name of the malware sample is malsample1. So we have no clue what kind of file it is. And as I mentioned before, it does not necessarily have to be a PE executable, PE file. That is the malware that we'll be analyzing from now on will be real world malware samples, and they will not be necessarily a Windows related malware, but it may be any kind of malware. It may be a Linux based malware, or it may be a PDF based or a document based, anything it could be. So we'll be covering them, and we'll be using open source tools for that. And Remnux Linux is one operating system or a platform, if you would say, for malware analysis that is having all kinds of tools. So you don't have to worry about anything. It is already having, so you don't have to think about installing a particular tool unless you are having or facing any kind of error. So in case you face any kind of error with installation of Remnux Linux, then let me know. And you may collect malware samples. I have mentioned in my previous videos in another playlist whose link I am providing in the description below. So from there you can actually collect few malware samples. I'm not letting you know which malware sample is it, but we'll be starting with the very simplest ones, which are not having too many information, but yet information enough for you to understand that it is malware. So we'll be going ahead with that approach, and later on, as we move ahead, the malware samples will start getting a bit more tricky, and our analysis will also, advance a bit. So let's get started. So simple, we can see that we can use a file command. And we can see that it says Microsoft Word. Quite interesting. So this time we are analyzing a Word file. Now the thing is, as I mentioned, currently we are focusing on the static analysis part. So Remnux Linux is perfect for us right now. Later on, when we need to perform the dynamic analysis, we'll be using a Windows machine. And in my previous videos, I have shared how you can set up I have a complete malware analysis based setup using Flare VM in my previous videos. So here we can understand that this is a Microsoft Word. Now, there are different kinds of document files. Previously, the files that they used to have were OLE kind of files. So they were also document files, but they were kind of different. Nowadays, the kind of document files that we have, they are more of like zip files. So if you have any idea, so while analyzing, in fact, you'll get to know about the headers. So while you'll be analyzing those files, you'll see that they say that they are the zip files. So when you unzip them or when you extract those files, you would find some more folders and files. And while analyzing them, you would get to know more about them. But currently it is an OLE file. And these kinds of files most of the time have macros. Macros are a kind of, you can perform different kind of functionalities using them. You can write your own mini scripts using macros. A lot of times when you when you download a document file, and if it is malicious, especially, so it will ask you to enable your macros. In that cases, you have to be very careful whether you need to allow, you should be allowing the macros or not, because allowing the macros for a document would actually result in execution of certain commands, which are actually which are not very good for your system, for your device that you're using. So here, for analyzing this Microsoft Word file, and since I mentioned that this is an OLE file, you can understand about the file a bit more yourself. You can do the research on your own. But for now, we'll be analyzing this file using the tool OllyDump, which is an open source tool. You can download it if you're using some other kind of Linux, or if you're having Remnux, it is already present over there. So I'll simply write ollydump.py and run this sample, malsample1. So it will give you some idea, some information about the kind of file that it is. So we can see that there are A1 to A10, there are 10 kinds of different things over here, out of which A3 gives you an idea that there is some macros. So maybe there could be some execution that is trying to perform. Of course, macros not necessarily mean that the file is malicious, but since we are analyzing a file, so it has to be a bit malicious, because I have chosen a malicious file, in fact. So you can see there's another, since new macros is mentioned, you can also see that there is capital M mentioned over there, which mentions that it is a macro file. Small m also indicates that it is a macro file. But the difference between these two is this capital M is actually consisting of some code that might be, bring interest to, that might be very interesting for you. Small m might not be having too much information, but yes, we'll be analyzing both of them. So the next command that we are going to run is -s, which is going to define which macro we are going to analyze, which is third one, and -v, so that we can read it completely. We can read it properly. If you do not use -v command, you won't be able to see the output as we are going to see it right now. So for now, I'm not going to give you much information, detailed information of the tool or maybe of the kind of files. But if you want me to cover the kind of tools that I'm talking about, like a complete video on tools like OllyDump and other tools that I'll be using. Also, if you want me to give an explanation on what is an OLE file or how does a PDF file look like, then we can have a separate video on that. Let me know if you want me to cover those, those kinds of videos as well, then I'll be covering them. So for now, we are currently focused on analyzing the malware. So let's see how does it look like. Well, this is a very simple one. As I mentioned that I will be covering the simplest malware and then we'll be advancing one by one. So this is a very simple one. From here, you can see that it is using PowerShell.exe. So if you're downloading any document file, then why should it be using PowerShell? So that is the first thing. Second, you can see that new object net.web client. The web client is indicating that maybe it is trying to make a connection, an HTTP or HTTPS connection. But also from here, you can see that it is writing download string. So maybe it is downloading some kind of something from this URL that is mentioned. Now the URL that you can see is the IP specifically is 192.168, which kind of indicates that it is a private IP maybe. So you never know, maybe it is not. So actually it should be a private IP. Anyway, so it is downloading some payload from this particular IP. Let us not get into the public-private IP part. Let us just consider it as any normal URL, maybe considering it as a malicious URL. So it is downloading payload.txt. Now we don't have any idea what is that payload.txt. But while performing this simple static analysis, we can conclude that it is malicious because first of all, it is using PowerShell, which we don't think any document that we are downloading should be using. Second thing that it is using web client, which means it is trying to make a connection with the HTTP or HTTPS. The third thing that we can see that it is downloading some string. So there is another payload that is supposed to get downloaded. And the last but not the least of these things is that it is executing it. Exec is the variable and shell is, I think, the function that it is performing. To be honest, it is not very much possible for you to know about each and every function, but you can actually analyze, you can guess, and you can understand what is exactly happening over there while going through the code. So understanding, you need to build a logical understanding of the script that you're reading. In case you're not able to understand the functions, you can simply Google. There is no harm. It's completely fine to not know a lot of things, but there is a harm if you are not willing to learn those things. So anyway, this was just static analysis. If you want to perform dynamic analysis, so we'll have to execute this document file in a Windows machine. And over there, we can actually use those tools that we have used in our previous videos. And you can see that how is it trying to make the connection, what is it downloading. Once that file gets downloaded, you can analyze that file too. So that's it for now. This was just a small trailer for you all, for everyone to understand how we are going to analyze. And currently we are focusing on the static part. We'll gradually move ahead with the dynamic part once we are very much clear with the basics of static analysis of various kinds of files using various tools and by gaining an understanding of how differently you can analyze different kinds of files and how interesting it is just to statically analyze a file for now, especially when you are a beginner, because things will definitely get advanced. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next video, and we'll be covering some more malware in my upcoming videos. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And thank you so much. Have a nice day.